Hello, my children. I was asked today to come lecture you on ethics. So, we will talk about what is right and what is wrong. You see? Okay. I am Sister Cecilia. I am the patron saint of music, and I did not die because I played music. So, how can you live without music anyway? It's the world of beauty. It's the top value. So, ethics. We should talk. All right, here, let me start this. The ethical leadership. We are living in a time when I say nobody gives a shit. Can I say shit? I think I can. Let me check. I'll look it up real quick. Is it in here? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, shit. I can't find it. Well, I do not want to mock religion, but, and I cannot see through these glasses, but I do want to talk about ethics. And I'm always striving to find a way to get you interested. So, Sister Cecilia is still here in spirit, but let us continue talking about one of the most last important topics of leadership. I have skipped over to ethical leadership because it really is kind of the biggest lesson that we have left. And I'd rather do it now so that some of you can write about it in your final paper and deliberate and think a little bit about it. And when people think about ethics, they often think about religion, because certainly many religions, and just so you know, I mean, I've got my rosary and I'm also wearing my Sikh kara, and I'm sure I also could have some other religion on my body right now. So I embrace religion, please. Really, who I would love to be is Sister Michael. If any of you watch the Dairy Girls, I love her. She's as sarcastic as can be. I think if I were a nun and I hadn't had sex all those years, I'd be like Sister Michael. But I do think I make a good nun. And I almost became a nun. True story. But it didn't happen. So you're really stuck with me. But ethics is a huge part of leadership. And we're going to go ahead and dive into that today. So bear with me and we'll get this lecture rolling. So, when we talk about ethics, it refers to standards of moral conduct. Ta-da! Thus, again, the nun. Hopefully you're getting the connection here, or I will have to. Wah! Ooh, that scared me. I did have nuns in first grade in church, and they did have rulers, and they were kind of scary, I admit. So, we are looking at standards of conduct. What is essentially, yeah, to some degree, what is right, what is wrong, or good or bad? These are very difficult questions to answer, especially in today's world, because everything is fairly relative. But one of the most important things to me as a leader is information management. And you probably may not have thought about information management being an ethical issue, but I would argue it is the number one issue you will face as a leader. It's it is critical. So what are some of the issues we deal with when we have to manage information? Leaders typically have more information. They get more information. So when do you share that information? Should you share all information? How do I get information? Do I get it by eavesdropping on people, etc.? So I'm going to begin with a premise that I hope is new for you, something that I feel very strongly about, and it is the when to release information. I pretty much am a believer that all information should be shared as soon as possible. And a lot of people are just like, whoa, what about XXX? And you give me all these different scenarios, and I'll sit there and I'll tell you, nope, 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 nope. I really am against a closed door policy or managing information when it so closely that doesn't get to people. And here's what happens. If a leader holds information back and their followers don't feel like they're getting enough information, you're going to lose them. Not only are you going to lose them, but that's when rumors start and people start making up information, and then inaccurate information gets out, and it causes so many more problems than if we just told people what was going on. And you're probably going to have to trust me on this one, but I had leaders who shared information even when they were told they shouldn't. They said, hey, here's what I learned today at this meeting, and I'm going to tell you. And we had such a referent type of power for this leader, and hopefully you remember that. And we liked this person, and so we trusted them. We respected them, and they told us information and trusted us with information. And we are less likely when someone comes in and says, hey, here's what's going on, and I don't really know what's going to happen after this, but as soon as I find out, I'll let you know. We were like, okay. And it stops rumors, it stops gossip, it stops bad information from getting spread, and there's no secret. It's just fascinating how the whole concept of secrets start. And when we're saying, I have a secret, it's so interesting because that makes people want to know. And then you don't tell them. So you are automatically building in this tug-pull relationship with information. So I'm really a big proponent of sharing all information, good, bad, difficult. I really don't believe in closed door conversations ever. And I will show you a couple of issues I've had lately. So I'm going to share this because that's what I do. I don't know that the nuns would approve, but I told you about this email I got, and it very much upset me. And this was us learning that you could do credit, no credit for this semester. And I just wanted to show you this line. Whoopsie. This one, okay, well, it's the one that I'm starting with. I'm not making a general announcement. This immediately bothered me for ethical reasons. So we were asked not to tell our students, basically, that they could take this semester credit, no credit, because they just wanted us to try to deal with it on a case-by-case basis as appropriate. And this just hit me immediately as wrong. And I told you about it that day in the live Zoom. I was like, dude, look at this. How do I not tell students? Are you going to tell me? What if a student found out about this after the fact and realized they didn't get this opportunity? I mean, yes, it's more work for our advisors and potentially those kinds of things, but that's our responsibility to prepare for that. Either you do something or you don't do it. You don't say we're doing this, but let's sweep it under the carpet. That's the whole Catholic Church, and probably why I am no longer a part of it. Because of transparency and unshared information. It will be the biggest issue you face as a leader. I will encourage you to share information. What we do know now, by the way, just as an update, is we had an emergency Senate meeting, and we do know now that you have the option to take all of your classes, credit, no credit, but they haven't really helped you. This is another ethical issue, if you will. What they've done is basically in order to get credit, you have to be getting a C or better. So if you are going to get a C- or lower in a class, taking the credit, no credit doesn't help you. Trust me on this. If you're going to get a D in a class this semester, not mine, but some other class, and you think, I'm just going to take credit, no credit because I'll get credit, you won't. A D gives you no credit. Make sense? You would have to take that course over again in order to get credit. You are better off. You can actually pass capstone. Hello, all of you in capstone. You can pass capstone with a D as long as you don't fall under the overall 2.0 GPA. We say D's get degrees. Woo! Yeah! Okay, Catholics do not party. Well, actually, we party a lot, but we'll keep it down here. Um, you're better off taking the D, passing the class, and moving forward. That's the better option. So there's a whole bunch of stuff hidden in this. And it bothers me because it's not necessarily good for students. The information has not gone out in the appropriate manner, and it's been hidden. And if this irks you in any way, it should, because transparency is a key factor. We have information, we should release that information. I also don't believe in getting my information standing around with the cup to a closed door. I ask. Sometimes I don't get told. Sometimes it won't be shared with me, but I'll ask for it. We've come to believe that information is this commodity, and it's not. Information, should be shared. We should get our information ethically, and those should be made known to coworkers. I actually had a department chair previously. We had the printer, much as we do now. The printer, when you print something, it goes to the general copy room so anyone can see what you printed. So if you're going to print something and you don't want anyone to see it, you better run and get that off the copier. Because he always said, but he told us this, he says, I'm a nosy person. You leave something on the printer or the copier, I'm going to look at it. And okay, I don't know that was all that ethical, but at least he was honest. I knew if I was going to print something and I didn't want anyone to see it, I better print and run so that I got to the copier, or I would print it at home. I mean, I really enjoy the notion of transparency and sharing information. It is, when you look at case studies and you look at how leadership failed, it was due to information not being released and not being shared in an adequate and appropriate way. Need I say more? COVID-19. And when we do lie, and we do see business folks lie, we see politicians lie, athletes lie, and I had to bring the athletes part in just because I'm missing baseball terribly. And I remember when a lot of them, I did not use steroids, or Lance Armstrong. Remember that? He's ruined. It damages the character of the liar, and it damages the organization. And I think what is happening, even for some at SDSU right now, they're not handling information very well right now, and have not through most of this crisis. In my, I guess, professional PR opinion, I think I am losing my habit. Oh, that's such a bad habit. Okay, no more jokes. You want to hear about the one about the priest, the rabbi, and the Polak? No, okay. All right. So you're damaging the organization by putting people in a position of lying. And so it's just bad policy all the way around. These are some information myths, meaning they're not true. Information is not a commodity, and information doesn't have power. I have a lot of information. I could tell you a few things, recite you some beatitudes, or say a few propitiations or prayers for you. Would you like that? If you don't want that information or don't need that information, not powerful. More information is better? No, keep it simple, stupid. And that's the other thing about meetings. I talk about this when I teach OrgComm. How many countless wasteful meetings do we have? If it's something that doesn't require that group's decision, I'm losing my habit, then you shouldn't be meeting. Put it in a memo. And all information is not value-free or knowledgeable. I think all of our communication has a persuasive tinge to it. And of course, not all information gives us knowledge. Some of it is quite useful. And TikTok, need I say more? No, I'm joking. I know you love TikTok. All right. So ethical leadership, I think, has some pretty important parts to it. If you are the leader, I guess we're just going to ditch the habit because it is falling off. So sorry about that. You have to be responsible for all of your followers. If you screw up or you say something, I'm responsible. I cannot, and we've seen this in the COVID-19 crisis, so many other leadership case study where the responsibility is thrown on someone else. We just did the whole World Health Organization debacle. It was their fault. So now we're going to punish them and not give them money. Leaders have to step up and just say, yeah, we're responsible for what we did. It works so much better in the long run for companies. Power, obviously, this one's a little bit tricky. Power is what corrupts. When you start looking at case studies of where leadership failed, Catholic Church is a great example. If you haven't seen the movie Spotlight, check it out. Is it ethical to demand compliance when a follower has a moral objection to the request? For me, I don't believe it is. Now, I think this one gets tricky because a lot of folks might have different standards of what that is and what the request is. But I do think we have to respect people who don't feel comfortable. I worked at Point Loma, as you know, religious institution. And gosh, I touch my face too much. I'm going to get COVID. Anyway, I wanted to show a rated R movie in my intercultural class. And of course, I recognized that may have a moral objection for some of the students in the class. Notoriously, at Christian universities, you don't watch rated R movies. At Liberty University, which has been in the news over the COVID-19, you get fined if your resident assistant catches you watching a rated R movie. So I knew that I better take responsibility for this. So I drew up a permission slip and had them, what the content of the movie was, that they agreed to watching the movie and everything. And then I also gave an option because I knew I would have one or two students who would object and not want to watch the movie. So I already had a backup movie that they could watch on their own that was PG. And trust me, it was asked for. So certainly, I think as a leader, even if you don't question the morality of something, if somebody else does, again, balance processing. You have to stop and think about that. How much and to what degree do you use your own personal use of power? Wow. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about power, and I think leaders do have to use their power. Because I'm a fan of authentic leadership, I think I try to use the power that I may have, but within the system. And it doesn't mean the system won't shut me down. It will. And I may have reached the top of where my power can take me. But I won't misuse that power to go around the whole system. I don't think that's the way to do it. And I think that's where other leaders get in trouble. They get powerful enough that when the system or the structure of where they are working or whatever politically what they're doing stops them, then they go find a way to move on outside of the system. And I think that's a really important distinction because power inside the system in the legitimate structures is good. We are finally changing internship to a variable unit starting in the fall. So you can actually earn in one semester anywhere from 1 to 3 full units for an internship. I have fought for this since I first came here. It has taken 6 years for me to get this approved and actually now in the catalog and on the books. Okay, 6 years, and I had to persuade the faculty. They said internship was not a valid learning experience, and I was like, ah. But I fought for it and used everything I could to convince them. I worked through the structure. I never went around it, and it's finally paying dividends. So what we sometimes have to realize is that working within a system and a structure, whether it's politics, an organization, academia, to go around structures or outside of the system, I think is when we start seeing people abuse their power. Some things that come in to benefit or can come into play are any privileges or social benefits a leader might garner because of their position. Have to be very careful about privileges. I'll tell you a quick story. I had no idea. You guys are so sneaky. But I had a student who, oh, my Kleenex box, excuse me. I should start with, I have a confession to make. It has been 25 years since my last confession. Anyway, student invited me, I think I might have told you this story, to a concert. Her father was like the vice president of Pepsi, and it was up at the Staples Center, and she said, oh, come just stay at my house. I know you're a big fan. And she was a student, and I thought we were friends, and I went, and it was a great time, and she, you know, they took care of everything. We had a suite, and awesome. You know what she wanted in return, right? She was expecting an A. And I had no, she wrote a very horrible letter about me afterwards saying we did all this for her and then she gave my daughter a B or something like that. And I was young. I had just started teaching. It was a pretty big wake-up call to say, don't accept things. And it's difficult because, yeah, it just puts you in an odd position. You have to be careful. Loyalty. I think you should have loyalty to your followers. Don't be wishy-washy. Don't constantly change sides or turn your head. If I say I'm for students, then I need to be for students. That's my goal. I don't turn around next week and say, yeah, I'm really in favor of this policy that's going to hurt you. I just don't see that happening. I try to stay loyal to what I believe, and I try to be consistent. And that was something that bothered me about how this policy was rolled out. Is there's no consistency. I have literally 400 students, and some of you may not want to say, "Yeah, I need help." I get that. So how am I going to know who does? The only way I can keep things consistent and be ethical is anytime I do anything, it has to go to everyone. It's just like I said, when people ask for extra credit and I say, you know, if I do it for you, I have to do it for everyone because it's an ethical issue. Okay, some components of ethical behavior. This is actually in your book. You're probably, I'm like, woo, remember this thing here? This is actually in your book, and it kind of goes through and talks about it in the ethics chapter, which is chapter 11, and goes through these 4 kind of pillars. Moral sensitivity, identifying existing ethical problems. You have to be able to identify them, where things are being abused, where power is being abused, where people are going around the system, where things are not equitable for everyone. Someone has to be able to point that out. I actually wanted to point out in that email that I didn't believe this was ethical, and to not offer it, to not tell the students it was being offered. I huge ethical problem with that for me. And a couple people told me, don't say anything. You already say too much. You're just going to, just deal with it. Let everyone deal with it however they want. And I was like, that bothered me. But nobody else said anything either. And I thought not a single person in the department, the faculty, the graduates stood up to say anything. And I don't know which one is worse, quite frankly. So you have to be able to identify and bring ethical problems to the forefront. When you do, what course of action should be taken? And oftentimes, I think it's a course of action, again, that goes back and says everyone should be treated equally across the board. And you have to follow through on those choices and implement them. So it's a very, obviously, it makes sense. It's not that difficult, but certainly there's a lot more to it when it actually happens and how we implement those choices and changes in what we do. If I think there's a problem with closed door conversations, there's too many of them. I think we need a new policy of more open door behavior. Am I going to be the one to stand up and say that? How should we put that into effect? Would it be followed through on? And are we, how, then what are we going to do? Do we tell people, if I saw your door closed, what were you doing in there? We could create an atmosphere of mistrust. So I don't know that that's the best answer or the best issue, but these are what we have to do if we're going to change ethical behavior. I just do want you to know, we're going to go a little bit back to your philosophy class right now, because I do want you to be familiar with some different ethical perspectives. These are also in your text in chapter 11 as well. And Kant's categorical imperative is one of my favorites. He says it's without exception. And what that basically means is Kant pretty much said there is a right and a wrong. And you can't make an exception. We live in a postmodern time where all truth is relative. I've told you this before. Your favorite words are, well, it depends. And Kant would say, no, it doesn't depend. So something like, I would say it's wrong to kill another person. Period. It's wrong. Shouldn't do it. And now I know some of you are sitting there going, but what about... and those are valid points. It's not that they're not valid. Remember, this is just the ethical perspective. And I don't know. I do believe it's wrong to kill someone regardless. So if somebody was holding a gun to my head and I had a gun and I could kill them first, would I do it? I don't know if I could. I really don't. If someone said they pulled me, but what if they pulled me in deeper? What if someone had a gun to your son's head and you could kill that person before they killed your son? Would you do it? Oi, oi, oi. I don't know. I honestly don't, because my perspective is it's just wrong. I don't know if I could take a life, but that's me. And I think that's where I am definitely probably more of a categorical imperativist, that I do believe there are certain things without exception that are just wrong. If we were in class, we'd have this discussion where I'd say, is there something universally everyone could agree on without exception? It's wrong. And I may have told you this story. One person shouted out in class when we were in the classroom, and this is that part you miss in the classroom now, and I'm sure this would have been a great discussion. Somebody said rape. Rape is wrong, regardless. And I was like, okay. And as I turned around, someone started speaking up. A gentleman started speaking up, and he said, yeah, but what if she was asking for it? It was like, and it got a little dicey in there. You know what I'm saying? Are there certain human rights, privileges, and dignities without exception that we would say are wrong or right? And most of the time, you find something that's not yours, you return it without exception. To me, I am much more of an imperativist, and I know that. That's not where probably most of you are. So we'll talk about where most of you are. A lot of you like the idea of utilitarianism. I do and I don't. I never use this in class. It's interesting because it doesn't work in a way. Utilitarianism benefits the greatest good. So if this is what the greatest good wants, this is what we'll do. And I learned early on in teaching that you would say, how many people want to, go out to recess versus stay in and finish early? Or even recess, like night classes. How many people would rather end early and not have a break? And you just ask, and the greatest number wins. What's wrong with that? You're not providing equity. Somebody is pissed off, and they're not going to get a break, and it doesn't work well for them. You can't. You have to. I think as a leader, you have to make sure everybody's on board. Now, are there times when you have to literally choose what's best ultimately for everyone? Potentially, yes. But I'm more kind of the the perspective that if I can find a way, it's kind of like utilitarianism almost seems like a compromise to me. Well, if you give this up, I'll give this up and everyone will be happy. And it's like, no, why can't we make everyone happy without giving anything up? And I think that's the conflict problem solving collaborative paradigm I work from. So sometimes you do have to obviously do what benefits the greatest number of people, but oftentimes really what you're doing is then making minorities and other groups feel left out and not being equal across the board. But it is a perspective out there. Rawls was another big philosopher, justice as fairness. What is fair and equitable? And this is really the notion of you get what you deserve, if you will. The crime or the punishment fits the crime. They would talk about some people getting, their hand cut off if they stole. That's fair. That's equitable. Oh my gosh, can we talk about, there was a Family Guy episode where I think Peter sleeps with somebody, and so then he tells her she has to go have an affair so they'll be equal. That's the way to solve the problem. And that, I don't think that's necessarily the way to do it, but it is trying to go back and say, well, is there a difference between let's take plagiarism. I try to do what is fair or just with plagiarism. And as you know, professors are all over the place with this. Some people say, well, you didn't put the right quotation marks and page number in your source site, therefore you plagiarized. You're going to fail the whole class. To me, that doesn't seem fair. I think first, I kind of have a first level. I'll tell you about it. Say, you probably did this by mistake. Now that you're aware, make sure you fix it. Okay. The second time you do it, I may talk to you about it. For me, if it's a second time and it's obvious, I'll probably dock the paper or the assignment itself. If it were to be very obvious again a third time, to me, then that would be fair grounds for failing a course. Where it, so we have to say what is fair and equitable to match for the justice for what was done. Aristotle actually looked at or originated virtue ethics, and it was this idea of the ideal leader or a virtuous person, or as Aristotle put it, the virtuous man should have these high ethical characteristics. Excuse me. I put these in here because these kind of go back to some of the ones we've talked about. But I think if you want to be a virtual leader, again, you need high levels of self-awareness. You have to know where your morals and values stand. I have to have already decided what is fair and equitable. I mean, I often have to stop myself and think about these things and not make a quick decision. And that's because I'm going to take the time to think about it and know what I think is fair and equitable for everyone. I look at all sides, balanced processing. Utilitarianism leaves out a portion of people. It always does. I hate voting. I don't think any group, any team particularly should ever vote. You should solve things through collaboration and complete agreement. Taking votes splits and divides, and it's not equitable or fair. Authentic behavior. Say what it is, be transparent, and be genuine. So those were, and Aristotle listed, I think, like 15 different characteristics he thought all leaders should have. They've narrowed them down into these kind of more modern ones now. Altruism is basically another, the idea comes out of religion in some ways, but altruism is just you have a heart, you want to do it. And so you do good things because you want to. You feel so moved. You're altruistic in your motives, and a lot of people, you would say, are altruistic. And then relativism. This is you. hate to say it, but it's the majority of the postmodern generation. Relativism is the ethical perspective or philosophy that it all depends. And that's exactly what it is. So I can't tell you whether something is right or wrong without or fair or equitable. It depends on the situation. So it almost becomes a little bit like situational leadership, and everything depends. I think this is difficult for people at the same time. It's like you like it. You're like, yeah, everything does depend. You got to take each situation as it comes. But I also think it can make it difficult to put a baseline down and just say, here are the things we're not going to do on this team. We're not going to cheat. We're not going to, lie to each other. We're not. If everything is relative, you open the door to everyone having their own standards. And I wonder if there shouldn't be some baseline, even though many things now kind of go with well, it depends. That still worries me. And of course, the kind of even more horrible side of relativism is egoism. So this is, well, it depends, and it really, the only thing it depends on is how much good or benefit it does me. So I remember talking to students when we were legalizing gay marriage, and I was asking them, well, how do you feel about it? And they were like, honestly, I don't really care. It doesn't affect me. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is egoism. You have no perspective of the fact that you live in a broader society. It's the same thing with COVID-19 right now. We're having these protests and people are going out in groups. It happened here in San Diego and they're saying, let us out. We want to be free. And it's like, it's not about me. It's about other people. I don't want to infect other people. Not only do I not want to get it, but I don't want to infect other people. So it is this idea that we are existing not alone. We exist with others. So that is relativism. That is the end of our ethics lecture. And maybe you want to consider some of these perspectives in where do your ethics and values fall when it comes to the kind of leader you want to be. So for now, I guess Saint Cecilia will go play her flute, and she'll be all good, because that's the right thing to do. All right, we will talk more. I will be interested in hearing your ethical perspectives in your final paper. Bye, guys.